The day we buried my father, the sky felt heavy, like it was holding secrets. I stood beside the grave, listening to prayers drift over me, but my heart was racing beneath my calm face. Grief wrapped around my chest, slow and tight, yet something else crept in, quiet and sharp, a feeling I could not name. People hugged me, offering soft words, but their eyes lingered too long, searching, measuring. Between sobs and sighs, whispers floated behind polite tears, slipping through the air like cold wind. I felt it deep in my bones that this moment carried more than loss. This funeral was not only about saying goodbye. Something unseen had already shifted. As the coffin was lowered, the sound of soil hitting wood echoed inside me. My hands trembled, not just from grief, but from instinct. A quiet warning rose in my chest, steady and clear. I did not understand it yet, but I knew my life was changing. Losing my father was only the beginning of a storm I was about to face alone and unprepared completely. After the burial, the house filled with voices that did not sound like mourning. Chairs scraped, cups clinked, and conversations lowered whenever I stepped into a room. I noticed how silence followed me, thick and uncomfortable. Names of properties slipped casually into sentences, hidden behind concern. Someone mentioned what he left behind, as if his life could be reduced to numbers and papers. I watched smiles form that never reached the eyes, sympathy mixed with calculation. That night, sleep refused to come. Grief kept replaying memories, but another realization settled in slowly. The tears had dried too fast for some people. Laughter returned where sadness should have stayed longer. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to whispers travel through walls. They were not speaking about my father's kindness, his sacrifices, or his love. The whispers were about money, control, and entitlement. In that quiet darkness, I understood something painful. Loss had opened a door, and greed was already walking through it, confident and unashamed. I felt fear rise quietly inside my chest, warning me of what was coming. A week later, we gathered in a lawyer's office that smelled of paper and seriousness. I sat stiffly, hands folded, trying to prepare myself for whatever came next. The will was read calmly, line by line, but inside the room, tension cracked like glass. My father had planned carefully, thinking far beyond his final breath. He left the estate under my care, with clear instructions meant to protect what he built. The silence that followed was sharp and sudden. I could feel it press against my ears. Every eye turned toward me, heavy with disbelief, suspicion, and quiet anger. This was not what they expected. Murmurs started immediately, low and bitter. My stomach tightened as faces hardened. In that moment, I understood the truth. I had not only inherited responsibility, I had inherited conflict. Without saying a word, I felt myself pushed into a role I never wanted. I was no longer just family. I had become the enemy. The realization settled deep inside me, heavy with fear, confusion, and a sense of unavoidable change ahead for my life alone. Grief turned into accusations almost overnight, without warning or mercy. They said I had manipulated him when he was weak. They questioned my loyalty, my intentions, even my character. Some hinted that I forged documents, speaking in careful tones that cut deeper than shouting. I tried to defend myself, choosing my words slowly, hoping truth would be enough. It was not. Every explanation I gave was twisted into something ugly. I watched people I once trusted turn cold, their voices sharp with judgment. It felt like standing alone in the middle of a storm, rain and wind hitting from every direction. There was no shelter, no safe place to rest. Each day brought new blame, new stories, new pressure. I barely recognized my own family anymore, and as the accusations piled higher, I realized something terrifying. This was only the beginning. They were not looking for truth, they were looking for control. That realization drained my strength, stole my sleep, and filled every quiet moment with fear, doubt, and a growing sense of isolation inside my heart and mind completely. Phone calls stopped without explanation, leaving silence where voices once lived. Invitations disappeared, and messages went unanswered. Support vanished so completely it felt unreal. I learned quickly that love could change shape when money entered the conversation. Once inheritance was mentioned, I was no longer family. I was an obstacle standing in the way of what they wanted. The loneliness hurt more than the insults ever could. I walked through my days feeling invisible and exposed at the same time. Nights were the worst. I replayed conversations, searching for where everything broke. Slowly, another truth settled in. I was grieving two losses at once. I had lost my father, and I had lost the family I believed would stand beside me. The absence cut deep, leaving questions with no answers. Still, somewhere beneath the pain, a quiet strength began to form. I did not know it yet, but this isolation was shaping me for the fight ahead. It forced me to rely on myself, listen to my instincts, and prepare quietly for battles I never imagined facing alone before now. The message arrived one quiet evening, lighting up my phone without warning. It was not loud, not angry, and not violent. The words were calm, polite, almost respectful, which made them terrifying. They told me to do the right thing for the family and avoid unnecessary trouble. The threat was hidden inside kindness, wrapped in concern, but I could feel its weight. My hands shook as I read it again, my chest tight with fear. That was the moment I understood this was no longer painful family drama. It was a warning shot straight at my life. I started looking over my shoulder, questioning who I could trust. Sleep became shallow, broken by racing thoughts. Every sound felt louder, every silence heavier. Fear settled deep inside me, steady and cold. I knew then that something precious was under attack, and walking away would not protect me. It would only invite more threats, more pressure, and deeper regret later in life. I had crossed a line, and there was no safe return from it anymore. Not for me, ever, again, today. Doors that were once open slowly became closed. Invitations stopped, plans changed, and I found out about gatherings only after they ended. I felt watched without being seen, judged without being heard, erased without explanation. Even silence became a weapon, sharp and deliberate. I would enter a room and feel conversations die. Texts went unanswered, calls ignored, smiles replaced by cold stares. I started questioning myself in the quiet hours of the night. Was standing my ground worth this pain? Was peace better than truth? Doubt pressed against my chest until breathing felt heavy. But deep inside me, beneath fear and exhaustion, something refused to break. I remembered my father's trust, the way he looked at me when he believed I would do right. Giving up would mean betraying that faith. That thought steadied me. Even alone, even shut out, I knew I had to keep going. Closed doors hurt, but they also showed me who I truly was when everything familiar disappeared. Strength began forming quietly, painfully, but honestly inside my heart, preparing me for battles still ahead soon. I sat across from my lawyer, my hands clasped, my heart pounding louder than his calm voice. Papers lay between us, thick with consequences. He did not soften the truth. This fight would be long, expensive, and emotionally draining. There were no shortcuts, no easy wins, and no guarantees. I could walk away, he said, and keep my peace, or I could stand firm and prepare for war. Hearing it out loud made everything real. I felt fear rise, followed by anger and resolve. Walking away would mean living with regret, always wondering what could have been. As I left that office, the door closing behind me, I realized my life had split into before and after. Nothing would be the same. The person I was before grief and betrayal no longer existed. I stepped outside, took a deep breath, and accepted that there was no turning back. The path ahead looked dark, uncertain, and lonely, but it was mine to walk, one difficult step at a time, guided only by truth, courage, and my father's memory pushing me forward. I replayed memories from the past, trying to understand how we arrived here. Birthdays filled with laughter, shared meals around crowded tables, moments when family felt safe and certain. Those images clashed painfully with the present. I watched familiar faces harden, voices sharpen, and affection fade when money entered the room. That was when I learned a truth that hurt more than loss. Blood does not guarantee loyalty. Greed can rewrite history, turning love into resentment without warning. People remembered events differently, painted themselves as victims, and recast me as the villain. It felt unreal, like watching strangers wear familiar faces. I realized that shared blood only means shared origins, not shared values. Loyalty is chosen, not inherited. That understanding hurt, but it also freed me. I stopped expecting fairness from people driven by desire. Instead, I focused on protecting the truth. The past could not save me, but it taught me why I had to keep going forward alone, stronger, wiser, and less naive than before, carrying lessons carved by betrayal into my heart forever and pain endured deeply. One night, exhaustion finally broke me. I sat alone at the table, surrounded by documents, notes, and unanswered questions. My body felt heavy, my mind louder than the room around me. I wondered if peace was worth more than justice, if walking away would end the pain. Tears came quietly, sliding down my face without sound. I felt small, tired, and defeated. For a moment, I almost let go. Almost. Then I remembered my father's voice, steady and calm, telling me to stand firm even when it hurts. That memory cut through the darkness. I wiped my face, took a slow breath, and straightened my shoulders. Giving up would erase everything he believed in. I could not allow that. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I chose to keep going, not because I was strong, but because I refused to let fear decide my future. That night did not end my struggle, but it ended my doubt. I stood up, gathered the papers, and prepared myself for the fight ahead, carrying pain, courage, and hope together, step by step. While organizing old files, I found something important, hidden beneath dust and forgotten folders. There were records, handwritten notes, and a signed letter dated years earlier. My heart started racing as I read each line slowly. This was not memory or emotion anymore. This was truth, clear and solid, buried and waiting. I sat on the floor, surrounded by papers, feeling hope return carefully. It felt fragile, like glass, but it was real. The letter explained my father's intentions in his own words, calm and thoughtful. He anticipated conflict. He prepared for it. Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness, but relief. I was not imagining things. I was not alone in this fight. The past had left me a shield. I gathered everything neatly, knowing these pages could change everything. For the first time in weeks, fear loosened its grip. I slept that night with cautious hope, aware the battle was far from over, but confident now that truth had finally stepped forward beside me. That discovery reminded me why I must keep going, no matter how painful it. Rumors spread fast, moving ahead of me wherever I went. Lies followed me into public spaces, whispered behind smiles and polite greetings. My name was questioned openly. My character was attacked quietly. People looked at me differently, measuring me with doubt. It hurt deeply, cutting into places grief had already weakened. Still, something unexpected happened. Each lie made me stronger. If they needed false stories, it meant they feared the truth. I learned to walk with my head high, even when my chest felt heavy. I stopped defending myself to everyone. Truth did not need shouting. The attacks were meant to shame me into silence. Instead, they sharpened my resolve. I focused on facts, not noise. I reminded myself why I started this fight. Reputation can be rebuilt. Integrity cannot. Though the damage was real, it did not break me. It taught me endurance. Public pressure tested me daily, but inside, my belief grew steadier. I was no longer just surviving. I was preparing to stand firm when it mattered most. The storm shaped me into someone stronger than before. I stopped explaining myself to people who wanted me silent and small. I chose strength over approval, even when fear followed me closely. Standing alone was terrifying, but it was also freeing in a strange way. Without constant noise, I could finally hear my own thoughts clearly. I learned that resilience is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, steady, and unshakable. Each day I showed up for myself, even when no one else did. I accepted that not everyone would understand my choices. That acceptance gave me peace. I focused on what I could control, my actions, my honesty, my patience. Strength grew slowly, built from discipline and resolve, not anger. I stopped begging for validation. I stopped shrinking myself to make others comfortable. Standing alone taught me who I truly was beneath fear and doubt. Though isolation hurt, it also clarified my purpose. I realized I did not need approval to move forward. I needed courage. And with each passing day, that courage became my foundation. It supported me when nothing else remained steady around me inside always. Court felt cold and formal, but tension burned beneath every polite word. The air was heavy with judgment, and every movement felt watched. I sat quietly, listening to my own family argue against me with practiced confidence. Their voices sounded unfamiliar, almost rehearsed. Every word mattered. Every glance carried weight. I realized then this was no longer personal pain. It was proof versus lies, truth versus performance. The courtroom became a battlefield without shouting, where documents replaced weapons. My lawyer spoke carefully, presenting facts with steady calm. I focused on breathing, keeping my emotions in check. I refused to let anger speak for me. Sitting there, I felt exposed, yet determined. This was where stories ended and evidence began. The past weeks of fear led to this moment. I understood that justice moved slowly, but it listened closely. Even when fear crept in, I reminded myself why I was there. I was not fighting for revenge. I was fighting for truth. And in that space, surrounded by silence and tension, I stood firm, ready for whatever outcome awaited me beyond. As questions were asked, stories began to change in small but telling ways. Details shifted, timelines blurred, confidence cracked under pressure. I watched carefully, saying little, letting the truth surface on its own. Contradictions appeared where certainty once stood. The courtroom felt quieter as each inconsistency landed. Truth has a way of exposing itself when pressure rises. I felt my heart pound, but I remained still. There was no need to interrupt. Their own words were doing the work for me. I realized silence could be powerful when paired with patience. The more they spoke, the clearer everything became. Masks slipped. Anger leaked through controlled tones. I sat there, breathing slowly, trusting the process I once feared. This was the moment I had prepared for during lonely nights and anxious days. Watching lies unravel was painful, but necessary. I did not feel victory yet, only clarity. Justice was forming, piece by piece, in front of everyone, and for the first time, I believed the truth would be impossible to ignore. That belief steadied me and silenced the fear inside heart. When my evidence was presented, the room shifted in a way I could feel physically. Papers were handed over, pages turned, and the document spoke without emotion or hesitation. It was calm, clear, and undeniable. No raised voices, no explanations, just truth standing on its own. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear this time, but with deep relief. The weight I had carried for months began to lift slowly. I watched faces change as understanding settled in. Some leaned back, others avoided looking up. The fight was turning, and everyone sensed it. My father's intentions were no longer questioned or debated. They were written, signed, and protected by law. I sat quietly, hands folded, breathing carefully. I did not smile or react. This moment was bigger than emotion. It was validation. Every sleepless night, every lonely step, had led here. I realized then that truth does not need drama to win. It only needs space to be seen. In that courtroom, the document gave truth its voice, and it spoke louder than any accusation ever had before now. There was a moment when no one spoke, and it felt endless. The silence pressed down on the room, loud and heavy, filling every corner. It felt final, like a door closing softly but permanently. In that stillness, I knew the truth had landed exactly where it needed to be. Nothing else needed to be said. No arguments followed. No sudden objections appeared. I could hear my own breathing, slow and controlled. My heart beat steadily, no longer racing. I watched the judge review the papers again, calm and focused. Across the room, eyes shifted uncomfortably. Some stared at the table, others stared at nothing at all. The silence spoke louder than shouting ever could. It carried clarity, acceptance, and consequence. I realized then that truth does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives quietly and stays. That moment changed everything. The tension that once felt sharp softened into certainty. I sat still, letting the silence do its work, trusting that what needed to be understood already was. In that quiet space, fear loosened its grip and confidence replaced. Waiting was torture in its purest form, slow and unforgiving. Every second stretched longer than the last, pulling at my nerves. Doubt crept back into my thoughts, whispering questions I had already answered. What if it was not enough? What if truth failed me now? I closed my eyes and reminded myself that I had done everything right. I had stayed honest, patient, and faithful to my father's wishes. Win or lose, I had honored him. That thought grounded me. I focused on my breathing, counting each inhale, each exhale. Around me, the courtroom felt distant, almost unreal. Sounds blurred together. Time lost its shape. I realized how little control I truly had in that moment. All the preparation was finished. All the words were spoken. Now there was only waiting. Fear sat beside hope, both demanding attention. I chose to listen to hope. I pictured my father's calm expression and held on to it. Whatever happened next would not erase the truth. That knowledge gave me strength to endure the silence, trusting that justice, though slow, was moving toward me. The judge spoke calmly without drama or delay. Each word landed clearly, measured, and firm. I listened closely, afraid to breathe too deeply. When the decision came, it was simple and direct. I won. Justice did not shout or celebrate. It settled quietly into the room. My legs felt weak and my hands trembled as I exhaled deeply. Relief washed over me in waves, mixed with exhaustion. Months of tension released at once. I remained seated, absorbing the moment. There was no urge to smile or speak. The fight was over. I had been heard. I had been believed. I thought of my father and felt a soft warmth in my chest. This victory was not about money or pride. It was about truth standing its ground. The courtroom slowly emptied, voices returning cautiously. I stood up carefully, feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Winning changed nothing and everything. I had survived the storm. Justice had arrived, not as a roar, but as a quiet ending. And in that calm finality, I felt peace for the first time. I saw it in their faces the moment everything ended. Shock appeared first, then regret, then quiet anger. Some would not meet my eyes at all. Others looked away, as if distance could erase the outcome. I felt no joy in their pain, no sense of victory over them. Only closure settled inside me. The weight I carried was no longer mine alone. Consequences had found their place. I gathered my things slowly, aware of every movement. No words were exchanged. None were needed. I understood that winning did not mean reconciliation. Some losses could not be repaired. I accepted that truth without bitterness. As I walked out, I felt lighter, though sadness still followed me. I had not wanted this divide, but I had faced it honestly. Outside, the air felt different, calmer. I paused, took a deep breath, and allowed myself to feel everything at once. The chapter had closed. What remained was healing, quiet and personal. I did not look back. I stepped forward, carrying lessons instead of anger, choosing lasting peace. Victory was not free, and I learned that quickly. Relationships I once valued were broken beyond repair, leaving empty spaces where trust used to live. Some people disappeared completely, while others stayed distant, guarded, and cold. Winning came with scars that no one could see, but I felt every day. I carried guilt, sadness, and a quiet grief for what was lost along the way. Still, I accepted those scars as part of the price. Some battles change you forever, whether you want them to or not. I became more cautious, more selective with my trust, and more aware of human weakness. At times, the loneliness felt heavier than the victory itself. But I reminded myself why I stood firm. I did not choose this fight lightly. I chose it because walking away would have destroyed me slowly. The cost was high, but surrender would have cost more. Over time, I learned to live with the outcome, honoring both the win and the pain. They shaped me into someone stronger, quieter, and more grounded than before in life, always forward. Money did not heal the loss I carried inside me. It did not replace love, laughter, or the sense of belonging I once had. The house felt quieter, even fuller, and reminders of absence appeared everywhere. Healing came slowly, not through numbers or comfort, but from within my own choices. I learned to sit with my pain instead of running from it. I allowed myself to grieve without shame. Choosing peace over bitterness became a daily decision, not a single moment. Some days I failed and felt anger rise again. Other days I breathed through it and let it pass. I discovered that forgiveness was not for them. It was for my own survival. Money could fix problems, but it could not mend a broken heart. Time, patience, and honesty did that work. Little by little, I felt lighter. I stopped measuring my life by what I gained and started valuing what I protected. Healing did not erase the past, but it softened its grip on me. That quiet progress mattered more than any inheritance ever could in my life. I could have held on to anger and fed it every day. I could have replayed every insult and every betrayal until it consumed me. Revenge waited quietly, offering temporary satisfaction and endless pain. I saw that path clearly, and I refused it. Choosing revenge would have kept me trapped in the same darkness that hurt me. I wanted freedom, not bitterness. Letting go was not easy or fast. It required discipline, patience, and constant self-reminding. Each time anger surfaced, I acknowledged it, then released it. I focused on building a future instead of punishing the past. Peace became my rebellion. It was powerful in its simplicity. I learned that walking away with dignity was stronger than winning another fight. Forgiveness did not excuse what happened, but it loosened anger's grip on my heart. I stopped carrying other people's mistakes as my burden. Choosing peace allowed me to breathe again, to sleep without tension, and to imagine happiness without guilt. That decision changed everything. It gave me control over my life and closed a chapter that no longer deserved my energy. I rebuilt my life quietly, without announcements or explanations. Each small step forward felt fragile at first, but it was real. I learned from mistakes, from pain, and from silence. I became stronger, not by force, but by understanding myself better, wiser, because loss teaches lessons success never can. My life was no longer defined by inheritance or conflict. It was shaped by survival and steady growth. I created routines that brought peace. I surrounded myself with honesty, not noise. Slowly, I trusted again, carefully and intentionally. I learned to celebrate progress instead of perfection. Some days were still heavy, but they no longer defeated me. I carried my past without letting it control me. Rebuilding did not mean forgetting. It meant choosing what mattered most. I invested in my future with patience and humility. The ashes I rose from reminded me of what I survived. They became proof of resilience, not shame. Each morning felt like a quiet victory. I was no longer chasing approval or safety. I was building a life that felt true, grounded, and my own. Blood turned bitter in ways I never imagined possible. Love was tested under pressure, and truth was challenged at every turn. I lost people I thought would stand beside me forever. I gained strength I did not know I had. Surviving this journey changed how I see family, trust, and myself. I did not survive because I fought harder or spoke louder. I survived because I stayed true when it was difficult. I chose honesty over comfort and patience over anger. That choice carried me through the darkest moments. The experience taught me that integrity is the greatest inheritance anyone can leave behind. Money fades, property changes hands, but character remains. I carry scars, but I also carry wisdom. I learned when to stand firm and when to let go. My story is not about winning a case, it is about enduring a test of values. Blood may turn bitter, but it does not have to poison the future. I moved forward with clarity, peace, and quiet confidence. I survived, and that survival became my greatest victory in my life.